This is another episode of Nolan's Room. I'm going to cover just the Russian-Ukraine war real quick because I saw a press conference of Donald Trump saying that peace talks are close, and I've quite a hard time believing that. And I'm going to explain to you why it's not close at all. And he's fighting an uphill battle. It's not going to work out how everybody wants it to, and it's not going to end with Russia just giving Ukraine back to Ukraine, because those days are gone. That's long gone. Too many people have died. Russia's dug in. They've annexed a lot of eastern Ukraine, and that's not going back into Ukrainian hands ever, unless, we were to get involved, and that's not going to happen either. So please stick around. I'm going to show you a couple clips. I'm going to show you a video, and then we're going to talk about it. Thank you.
It was excellent. We covered, somebody would say 95%. I don't know what percent, but we have made a lot of progress on ending that war, which is really certainly the most deadly war since World War II. And the four people on this one are doing, I don't think anybody could do it, and we'll see if it gets done, but it's very close, certainly. Nobody would even have a chance of getting it to where it is right now. Nobody would have thought that was possible. So I just want to say we've done very well. We've had discussions on just about every subject, and that includes with President Putin before. And we went into great detail, and we likewise went into great detail today.
This war is not close to ending, obviously. He's trying to make the situation sound better than what it is, because his name is all over this peace agreement. His campaign promises are weighing on this. So even though I don't think he really cares too much about his campaign promises at this point, given his Epstein garbage, but mostly Trump wants credit for ending the bloodiest war on the European continent since the Second World War. But then there's the reality of the situation, and sometimes reality can be a bitch, and the reality remains, and it has since the very beginning of the war, that Russia will determine where the fighting stops. Not NATO, not the European Union, and definitely not Ukraine or its proxy master, America.
Because to do that, President Putin would have to surrender Russia's interests to us, and that's not going to happen. President Putin is going to end this war on terms that suit Russia. I think President Trump knows that. There's nothing he can do about it. And so he's effectively let the pot boil on the stove.
The uncomfortable truth of this war is that Russia can maintain a strong defensive line as long as it wants to, and capture land through small tactical advances as it has. And this has been the strategy from the beginning. Russia has isolated key objectives, surrounded them, and constricted them until over time the defenses collapse and they capture the town. And this strategy works, even at the cost of thousands of its own soldiers. Russia is willing to lose those men to achieve those objectives. Ukraine, on the other hand, cannot maintain positions indefinitely. They do have a defensive line that is strong, I guess, in some areas. However, they're unable to achieve any large-scale offensives on the ground. The last big offensive was early on in the war, so any hope for one this late in the game is a pipe dream. Their forces are tired, scattered, and the morale is low. Most of the fighters are old men or very young boys. Most of them are conscripts with very little training before being sent to the battlefield. And what's most important is Ukraine doesn't have the troops to spare. So each day the war continues on, it's another day closer to Ukrainian defeat. Everyone knows this is the reality of fighting in a war of attrition. It's like the Civil War here in America. Robert E. Lee was practically unbeatable on the battlefield. Lincoln fielded 4 or 5 different commanding generals and still couldn't find someone who could beat Lee. But as the war drew on, Lee knew that every battle that he didn't destroy the Union Army and end the war that day was a loss, no matter how big of a victory it was. It was a loss to the Confederate Army because those big victories come at a great cost. And the Confederate Army, much like the Ukrainian Army today, can't spare the men and resources to accept those sacrifices that need to be made to win on the ground. Russia can. Russia can reinforce. Russia has supply lines, and their supply lines have been made much better than they were than the start of the war. They can bring in supplies and equipment for however long they want. They can bring in new troops for however long they want. They can always conscript more, and it's because of that, if an end of the war doesn't come through peace talks, Russia will eventually win the war. And it will come with a complete Ukrainian collapse. And Putin knows this. So he's holding all the cards right now. Trump, NATO, the European Union, all of them, they have to convince Putin to stop, which won't happen until Putin has achieved his goals for the conflict. The goals that prompted him to start the war in the first place. He wants a large land buffer between Russia and the West. He wants a Ukrainian neutrality agreement. And he wants a new regime in Kyiv. Until all those 3 points are met, this war will continue on. The slow grind, the slow meat grinder. And we don't know how long the Ukrainian lines can last. So Trump is fighting an uphill battle with these talks. And I remain skeptical that he can achieve any kind of successful peace talks that would involve Putin giving up on any of his stated goals. And in case you don't trust me when I tell you that Putin is still pushing forward despite these peace talks, it doesn't seem likely that he's going to stop. He told his generals to press on in the campaign to take full control of Zaporizhia region in southern Ukraine. This was literally one day after he talked to Donald Trump about the peace agreements. Putin's not waiting to see if a deal will be struck. He's continuing on with his campaign. And meanwhile, the estimated casualty numbers are ridiculous. And I say estimated because we have no clue exactly how many people have died, because both sides have an incentive to not be forthcoming with the real numbers. Some people say 500,000 dead. I mean, think about those numbers for a second. We don't know what it's like to lose that many people in a conflict, in these modern times at least, and nobody does except Russia and Ukraine. Both sides are hugely invested in this war, and that's something we forget about when we talk about peace. It's a long road ahead, and a dark road, and it's not very promising. But I hope the best for Trump. I honestly hope Trump can pull it off and prove me wrong. I really do. And if he does, he deserves all the credit for it. He deserves it. And even though the liberal media and the Democrats will never give him credit for anything. But if he's able to do this, it will be one of the greatest examples of foreign diplomacy in this century. I mean, this war was very close to becoming the Third World War. Russia sees this as an existential fight, and Russia's citizens also see it as an existential fight. They don't talk about it. The media will tell you that Putin's people hate him. They don't. They see. I'm not saying that there's not a contingent or a faction of Russians that would like to see Putin gone, but there is a pretty decent sized majority that actually like him as a leader. He's been strong in the face of the European Union and the United States. And it took a lot of guts, trust me, to invade Ukraine, to start a conventional war in the 21st century. It took a lot of guts to do so. And he's maintained a very strong stance against the West in doing so. So his people see this also as an existential fight against America. And they should, because if, say for instance, the reality was not the reality we live in today. Imagine Russia invaded Ukraine in 2022, and instead of winning in a way in the East, say Russia collapsed. Okay, say the economy and the government and the military all collapsed under the weight of our sanctions and our military aid to Ukraine. Imagine it collapsed and Russia was in shambles, much like it was after the fall of the Soviet Union. How do you think the West, America mainly, how do you think America would have reacted to that? We would have jumped on the opportunity to take control, maybe not on the ground, but our influence in the region. And our military leaders and our politicians in the past have said that they would prefer a balkanized Russia, kind of like what happened after the breakup of the Soviet Union in the Western countries of the Soviet Union. So I hold no illusions that if they were able to, they would balkanize Russia. So in that sense, this is an existential fight for the Russian Federation, and their citizens know that. They know who is funding the Ukrainian military, who is giving them the missiles that are blowing up over them, who's training them to kill their soldiers. They know that it's Americans in the West that is facilitating this war. How would we feel? Well, how did we feel whenever the Vietnamese were using Soviet weapons and the Soviets were training and advising the Vietnamese? We didn't like it. So they're invested in this war. And it needs to come to an end. But like I was saying, I got off track, but we were very close to a world war. We weren't going to back down. Actually, Putin has showed a tremendous restraint after everything we did to try to help Ukraine win. So it could have been a lot worse than what it is. So to see this come to an end in any way, even if it is Russia maintaining its hold on the Donbass region in Ukraine, which I know a lot of people don't like to hear it, but it's going to be the reality. That's going to be how it ends. I'll be thankful to see it end, because the last thing I want is to have to go and fight in Ukraine or watch my brothers or my friends go and fight and die in Ukraine for a country that means nothing to us. It's just a country on a map. We have no interests in Ukraine. The only reason our politicians have interest in Ukraine is because they're more concerned with the American empire and our sphere of influence and our dominance on the European continent. That's why this war is taking place right now. We pushed because our influence needs to push into these countries, and Russia pushed back. And they warned us, and typical American politicians, we don't listen, because it's all we think about are our concerns and our needs. And so, and I'm not saying that Russia is completely innocent. Russia, Putin, believes that that they deserve a lot of the land in Ukraine, that they have a historical claim to it, and that's wrong. And the blood from this war and this conflict is on Putin's hands, and I think he knows that. So it would be great to see an end to this war come, but I don't know if it'll come soon. I don't know if it'll come this year or next year. And like I said, I don't really see either side being willing to end it right now. And so, yeah, that's all I got. Thanks for sticking around with me for my little breakdown here. Please like and subscribe, and catch me next time I'm able to upload a video. I appreciate it. Thank you. I love you. Peace.